Welcome to UF 222, Foundations of Ethics in Society. My name is Dr. Justin Davis. The emphasis of this UF 200 course is going to be on the American religious history. That is, the history and movements that have made up American religious life from the colonial era till about the end of the 20th century. I'm stopping short of those who are generally still alive, as those histories can still change and evolve. But the different movements and motivations that have happened within the American religious landscape is going to be what our focus is on, including, like all UF 200 series courses, looking at the relationship of ethics and society.
One of the things we're going to talk about in this class is religion, what it means for us, how it impacts us, and how societies move and evolve with it. So, an opening question for you to think about is, what is religion? It's a term that we use all the time, and we have a sort of understanding. If I see it, yes, that's religion. No, that's not. But what is it? Really? Write down a definition. What is a religion? Similarly, as a sort of basis for UF classes, is the idea of ethics. So, what is ethics? Right? We're foundations of ethics in society. So, what is ethics? What's the difference between that and just personal morality? How is it you're going to see these things? Again, we kind of know what we're talking about, but do we know what we're talking about? Teasing these out have got tremendous value for us.
In this course, we're going to look at two major parts. In the first section, we're going to talk about ethics and dialogue across differences. These are kind of some of your tent poles in all your UF 200 courses. We're also going to lean into kind of the major theme of this course, and that is religion. In the second section, we're going to look at the dominant trends of American religious life, but here in the first section, we're also going to talk about the academic study of religion. What is religion? How is it that we study it? What are the different ways that that can be done? Then, in the second part, we will talk about the dominant trends of American religious life, which is the major theme of this course. This is going to both be semi-chronological and somewhat thematic. We're going to begin in the colonial era, and we're going to end kind of at the end of the 20th century, maybe a touch into the 21st. The reason why I don't want to say we're going to bring it up till today is that I don't particularly want to talk about people who are still alive or religious movements that are still unfolding. Some of them might look like they're the hottest thing ever and then kind of fade. And therefore, any sort of definitive pronouncements that this is the future is kind of tricky. Similarly, you don't want to end up talking about somebody being the leader of the Catholic Church in America and all of a sudden they become a Protestant or vice versa, right? There's still, as long as somebody's alive, time for things to change. And I want to allow for that, at least when they are dead, that chapter is now closed. We're also going to, both in between the first section and kind of halfway through the second section, have another assignment where you get to present. I call these the 5-minute religion presentations. In the first one, you're going to talk about a person, somebody again who's passed, and this will be assigned to you, and you're getting to, in about 5 minutes, 4 to 6, there's a little bit of leeway, do an audio visual presentation where you will get to walk through who this person is, the events of their life, what makes them a key contributor to American religious life, and some fun facts and trivia. With this, obviously, you'll have things like their name and their date and that basic information. Later on, you're going to have one of these that it's about a religious movement that will also be assigned to you. In both of these that are 5 minutes long, you're going to generate some test questions that you are going to have your fellow students and yourself also answer. So there's going to be a student-generated test that's wrapped up within all of this. It's going to be an audio and visual presentation. How you'd like to do that, I give you a lot of leeway with. If you're wanting to sit in front of a PowerPoint and narrate it like this, that is totally fine. If you want to just have your camera on you and upload this to YouTube, that is also okay. Either way, you're going to give a YouTube link. That way, everyone in the class can go ahead and watch it. These become the sort of way of interacting and kind of being engaged with one another, along with following this discussion board for people to talk about what they found unique or interesting or exciting about these presentations in a way that isn't just kind of history, but something that you're engaged with as well.
Now, this is a University Foundations course. There are roughly 115 different sections of UF 200 in the broad understanding of that. And they all share some common themes and requirements. They all focus on ethics and dialogue. And that is one of the things that we're teasing out rather specifically in that first third of class, and then kind of applying in the last third of class, and kind of seeing how that has lived itself out historically in that middle third. But because this is a UF 200 class, there's some specific instruction on topics including talking across differences and dialogue that are very specific to this program. Again, there's value in them beyond just this program, but one of the things that the University Foundations program has requested is that we engage in the perspectives by CDI. What is this? It's a curriculum that has been developed which includes 6 modules, each taking about 20-25 minutes each to complete, and 3 different dialogue sessions, which they call peer-to-peer, where you're talking to somebody else about all of this. It's not guided by the instructor. It's, again, you guys discussing these things together. And these discussions are to help you dialogue across differences, so that way it makes a difference as you go by. And there's a lot of value that can be taken out of this for you. So students are going to be required to do the Perspectives online sessions on your own and be prepared to engage in dialogue and material within these dialogue sessions. The first is going to be set up with some in-class time, and the second 2 are going to be ones that you need to be able to figure out to assign with others. Not every single section of 200 is doing the Perspectives program at this point. It is highly requested that we all do, and so this class is going to be doing that as well. One of the other things that UF is wanting to kind of emphasize going forward too is that because there are 115 different sections of the class, each with their own variation on how they're discussing, ethics and dialogue across differences, there is a choice in which class you take. You might have taken this class because you are fond of me. I thank you for that. You might have taken this class because you like the topic and thought, okay, this would be interesting to talk about religion and society and how this moves and operates. And that could be why you're here. Or you might be in the class because it fits your time schedule. And maybe the topic does or does not apply. Again, you have a choice. So feel free to find another section that might be a better fit for you personally. If you happen to encounter anything in the syllabus or our discussions here that you're like, you know what, I'd rather go over there, that's okay. You have that choice. You're not compelled to take this one. You do need to take one. And again, 115 different sections. A lot of variation exists within all of these here. This course fits, within this sort of discussion, but feel free. Now, I want you to make sure to click on the document that is the syllabus and go through all of that. Look into the syllabus. It's going to give you all of the information about how you're going to be graded and what it is that you're going to do. Right? You need to understand some of the basics of this. For instance, when you're submitting documents, they need to be in Word or PDF files. I don't take Google Docs. Why? Because I want to make sure I have permission to read your paper, and be surprised at how many times that hasn't happened. And to sort of circumvent that, you might put it in as a text entry if that box is available. Otherwise, if you're submitting it, it's going to be done as a Word or PDF file. Make sure that you're comfortable with the due dates that are there, um, and understand which they are. Also, the syllabus has got a lot of information in there. That is there for your benefit. A good number of times, if you have a question, the answer is right there in the syllabus because I walked you through and gave it to you in the long syllabus. To try to make sure that you actually looked at the syllabus and know it, um, there's actually a quiz that all students are expected to take that says essentially, I've looked at the syllabus, I see what's in the syllabus, so I know I can get most of these questions answered that way. I'm more than happy to meet with you during office hours, respond to emails, talk to you before or after class, depending on what the schedule looks like. But the vast majority of your questions are there in the syllabus. Most of how things are going to function are there. So before emailing, check the syllabus. For the record, too, the syllabus is correct. Canvas might give you a date or a time, or it might not give you any date or a time that something is due. What it says in the syllabus is going to be the correct one, unless I have announced through an announcement or some other way that no, I'm going to extend this date or I'm going to change it based on any of this other stuff. So one of the very first things you're going to do in this class is to take a quiz on the syllabus to show that you've looked at it and that you're prepared to move forward and understand what it is that the syllabus offers, and hopefully be able to save you and me some stress along those lines.
Basic code of conduct is be kind to one another. This is an online class, it's asynchronous, and the little bit of interaction that you're going to have with your fellow students is going to be in discussion boards where you're going to be talking about religion, which can be, for a lot of people, a very sensitive topic. This doesn't mean that you're not allowed to say what you believe or that you need to do any form of self-censorship, but again, think about how to interact in a civil sort of way. We want to make sure that whatever sort of critiques we might have are directed towards a movement or a historical personage, and not one of your fellow students. We don't want to end up condemning an entire group of the student body or even a single individual, even if it's an idea that you don't personally get or understand. Make sure that it's done so in a respectful manner.
Another way this class works is that I don't do safe spaces. This class follows the University of Chicago model, where there is a commitment to freedom of inquiry and expression. What does this mean? That means I intend to speak on challenging issues from time to time. I expect to do things that question some of your basic assumptions. I also expect to be able to talk about things that actually happened, even if you don't particularly like that it happened or that a group of people did this. Especially when we're talking about religion, there's a lot of tension that exists within this because we're talking about some of your foundational belief systems. And yet, what do you do when there are some uglinesses that exist within how your group might have interacted with other groups of people, or some things that you hold today that might not have been acceptable before, or things that were acceptable before that you definitely don't think are okay today. Um, we can't carve all of that out and expect to learn anymore. The University of Chicago kind of provides this as a model, and I like to follow their model within all of this. You have to be able to be challenged to be able to explain what you believe. Now, as a general rule, I don't particularly care what you believe. I do, but as a general rule, I don't. You might believe and hold to things that I find to be morally repugnant or something that should be applauded and everyone should love you for it. In either case, I want you to know why it is that you hold the ideas that you hold. Every idea should be able to stand up to some scrutiny. It needs to be able to have the light shown on it, and people go, well, this is why I believe this. And you can accept it or reject it, but this is what things are. And so we have to be challenged to be able to do all of that. Trigger warnings also generally don't work. There's been countless studies on trigger warnings. I'll say all of them. There might be a few that I have not noticed, or another one that just that came out. But trigger warnings trigger the person that it's supposed to warn about triggering, and tell everybody else that they should be triggered about something, even if they weren't going to be triggered. In other words, the very effect that they're trying to do of avoiding some sort of catastrophe, it doesn't do. And so I'm not going to do them either. There might be a few times I might go, oh, okay, this conversation is going to be a little more intense, but it'll just be vague along those lines. As a general rule, there won't be a trigger warning. This class is going to talk about X, Y, and Z. Neither can we go ahead and know what somebody else is going to say in response to a question. Again, we need to be able to tease these things out, and this means we have to be okay with being challenged. Um, to that end, also, again, go back to don't be a jerk. You can challenge somebody, but make sure you're doing so in a respectful sort of way. There's no reason to provoke somebody just to provoke them. To that end, also, um, there's nothing that's not allowed in the class other than sort of universalizing statements that shut down a free thought or exchange of ideas. The idea of this is impossible shouldn't be expressed, right? Nothing is truly impossible, at least in the realm of ideas that we're going to talk about. We might talk about difficulties people have, obstacles that they have, systems that have made things more difficult, but the idea of it being impossible, probably not, right? Everyone also has a right to speak on any topic. Um, you can't say you don't know, you don't have my lived experience. That might be true, but they're allowed to speak on that, even if they don't have that lived experience. Your lived experience is something that you should be able to discuss and grow out of that as well, but that doesn't invalidate somebody else's opinions on that. In fact, they might say, I used to think this, but I haven't had that. Thanks for sharing from your personal perspective. I might revisit this. Or they might say, you know what, but I have these other examples that maybe don't line up with your lived experience, and I'm going to still believe something different. That is okay, right? No one's ideas are inherently invalid in this course. They may be wrong, they right, but that doesn't mean that they're invalid. One of the other sorts of things that I want to do in this class is to kind of connect with a statement that Alexander Solzhenitsyn made in his Harvard speech in 1978. For those of you unfamiliar with Alexander Solzhenitsyn, he's a Russian from the 20th century who lived during the Soviet Union. He won the Nobel Prize for Literature and spent a good amount of his time in life in the gulags. So he saw the effects of what the Soviet Union was doing to those who were religious or political dissidents. When he ended up coming to America, still during the reign of the Soviet Union, he was asked to speak at Harvard, where Harvard was expecting him to say, America is great, the Soviet Union is horrible, and just kind of leave it at that. Although a lot of people wanted to hear everything he had to say. And Solzhenitsyn, while he does say, yes, the Soviet Union definitely had its sins, that's one of the reasons why he was in the gulags, wanted to point out that that doesn't make everything in the West perfect either. He says that without any censorship in the West, fashionable trends of thought and ideas are carefully separated from those which are not fashionable. Nothing is forbidden, but what is not fashionable will hardly ever find its way into periodicals or books or be heard in colleges. Legally, your researches are free, but they are conditioned by the fashion of the day. So, just as the class wants to be able to stretch and to learn, and that means we can't kind of close off dialogue, the same sort of thing applies when we're talking about what our ideas are. This one, I want to have this be a college and university course where we can hear and discuss things that are not always fashionable because Maybe it's real, or maybe it's going to change what's fashionable. So our researchers need to be free to actually do these things and not be immediately cast out as a result of that. To help make sure that you've kind of understand the guiding sort of principles of this course, things wrapped up with Solzhenitsyn's statement and the basic code of conduct, in that this class will follow the model that is advanced by the University of Chicago. There's going to be a guiding principles quiz. It should be one of the very first things you do along the lines of the syllabus quiz. You're going to take it, and it's going to say, yes, I agree that there are not safe spaces in this class, that I'm not supposed to be a jerk either. It's kind of implied within all of that. But know that that is the way that this class works and operates, and that you are essentially, by staying in the class, agreeing that this is the way that the class is going to work and that you're going to operate along these lines.
The main readings for the first section of the class is going to be a provided reader that I ended up giving and compiling. It's a single PDF that's got all of the assignments, and that should be in order for the first section of the class. This is where you're going to get a lot of your big material, and we're talking about what is ethics and also what is religion. This is where you're going to get the primary text on that. I elected not to make you buy a textbook or provide my own reader for the second section of the class, because really the amount of material that's out there is going to be a lot, and therefore for you to be able to engage with this in the most productive way, I really encourage you just to look over and be engaged in those presentations that I've provided. And I give a lot of information and a study guide that, if you're able to fill out, will be more than enough material for you to kind of digest and to be engaged with. There is one book that I ask you to purchase, and that's Even Ilian's The Singing Heart, a book of quiet reflections. This book, in many ways, is the sort of culmination of a lot of the themes in this class. Ilian is a religious author who talks about ethical issues, and therefore many of the themes about how is it that we dialogue across differences, and how do we deal ethically with one another, and also how does this work within a sort of religious mind frame, is weaved throughout that entire book. I'm not having you read the entire book, but 5 sections, which is a little bit too much for me to just provide in a reader. I've had a lot of students who've really enjoyed this text, and many who've chosen to read the whole thing. Make sure you get this for the assignment, which is about 2/3 or so later on in the class. I'm going to ask you also with that to write a reflection on one of these sections. So make sure that you kind of have it and are ready for kind of a discussion, which, as a reflection yourself on a book of reflections, is a sort of dialogue process. Just a quick schedule note while you're looking through this. This is a 5-week online course. As a result of that, the amount of time you're going to spend every day will vary a little bit, but instead of a traditional 75-minute class, it's going to be closer to 90 minutes plus or minus. So keeping that in mind and what's going to be expected as we move through on this faster pace, make sure that you're ready for that and engaged. Also be very mindful. Every day, Monday through Friday, is how I have the course broken up. The due dates are due not at midnight, but at 5 p.m. Why? Because that's a reasonable time for me to get to it and for you to be able to produce it. You're totally allowed to work ahead of time. Remember that there is, in those 5-minute religion sections, something you will have to respond to things by a certain date with your fellow students. But if there's some that are available and you can work ahead, that is also okay. Just make sure that the things are done by 5 o'clock. Also, when the semester is over at the end of these 5 weeks, there will be no additional late work that can be done, because turnaround for me in grades is pretty quick. So make sure that you're on top of everything and are ready to, produce everything within this time frame as well.
Uh, why do you need to be in this class? That's not a weird question. A lot of people ask that about any of their classes, right? Why is it I need to be here? Why is it? Well, for some of you, the answer is simple of, well, I have to be here because it's required. Yeah, well, there's some truth to that. But then why does the university require this class? The university requires this class, or why it's a good reason for you to be here, is because there's some value in knowing who you are and the meaning that exists within there. John Vervaeke, a professor of psychology in Toronto, states that today we have a challenge which previous periods of history did not. Today we have increases in anxiety disorders, depression, despair, and suicide in North America and parts of Europe. These are symptoms of a problem that he says. The challenge includes the environment, politics, and culture. And he calls this the meaning crisis. So in the West, we're facing a crisis of meaning. We don't know who we are. We've kind of been unmoored from our normal sense of identity. And so one of the values of this class talking about religion is that we're able to look back at systems that at least had an answer to the meaning crisis. And that maybe there's different ways of looking at that same notion of meaning. Maybe you're doing it through the environment or politics or something within culture, but we need to know who we are. And so this is one of the values that this class has. It's not just that it's required, but we need to know what we're here for. Not necessarily, big picture, but at least some notions of meaning that exist. Without that, we're falling into anxiety disorders and depression and despair, and regretfully, even suicide. Our society today has divorced itself from institutions, beliefs, and cultures which have provided meaning. Postmodern rebellion has resulted in modern apathy and malaise. Vervecchi and others have pointed out that one way to end the meaning crisis is to engage in historic systems of meaning. A tagline on their site, wisdom is not optional. Right? So to overcome this lack of meaning that exists in society, we need to wisely anchor ourselves in systems of beliefs and practices which provide meaning. So this class helps to at least give us some anchor points. We are learning some of the wisdom from other systems. We're going to learn how things happened and how they shaped themselves and what that meant for them. So it helps us understand meaning through that way. Now, adding on to this, the naturalist Louis Agassiz states that facts are just stupid things until they're brought in a connection with some general law. One of the things this class does is to help provide those stupid things, these facts. You need to be able to take that and to make those connections. In many ways, this is what's going to give you the meaning to help solve the problem of the meaning crisis that has affected the West. This is one of the values that this class has.